السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشياعهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله، إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد، ولعن الله آل مروان، ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبة، ولعن الله ابن مرجانة، ولعن الله عمر بن سعد، ولعن الله شمرا، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنقبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي لقد عظم مصابي بك، فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله، إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونصب لك الحرب، وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم، وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشياعكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم، وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم والبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب، وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم، فاسألوا الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم، وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبته، مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد، اللعين ابن اللعين، على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم العن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية، عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعنة منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم العن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم العن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم العنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني وابدأ به أولا ثم العن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم العن يزيد خامسا، والعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. سجود. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة على روح المرحوم عمار أبو زينب. تسبق الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة بعد الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، خاتم النبيين، شفيع المذنبين، رحمة للعالمين، سيدنا والنبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع نفوسنا والطبيب ذنوبنا، أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين المكرمين الخيرين الفاضلين السيدين الصادقين سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لترى بمقدمه الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last night we completed our discussion on the spiritual aspect of wudu. We talked about how for somebody who thinks that wudu is only about these physical, dunyawi, scientific benefits, that they haven't understood the true value of any of the ibadat, but specifically for wudu. And we talked about how there's a number of different ways where somebody can prove that to be the case. We talked about just from the concept of the ahkam, the fiqh itself, that when a person cannot perform wudu with water, then they are supposed to perform tayammum. So if wudu is just about physical purity, then there's no way that Allah would order somebody to spread dirt on themselves. So that's clearly pretty much the opposite of being physically clean. And we also talked about how being physically clean, being pure of najasat, is a muqaddama. It's a shart, it's a prerequisite before you perform wudu. You can't be najis before you perform wudu. So if it's about najasa, well, you can't perform wudu if you have any najasa on those parts of your body. So that doesn't make sense as well. And of course, we also saw that in the ayah itself, where Allah is giving the details of how to perform wudu and tayammum, over there Allah is saying that this obligation of wudu and tayammum is for you to become purified. It's for tathir. And we know that this tathir based on other ayat, like the ayat of the tathir of the Ahlul Kisa, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, we know that this is a spiritual purification. It's not a physical one. And Allah says also the wudu is there to complete and do itmam of His ni'mah and His blessings. So that لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, so that hopefully you can do shukr. So these things don't make sense. None of these fit that puzzle piece and tell us that this is about physical purity. That might be one small benefit and dimension, but it's not the deeper understanding. And we saw that the depth and the breadth of wudu goes to the spiritual aspect of that. And we talked about some of the spiritual benefits that have been mentioned in the riwayat. We talked about the story of Nabi Adam alayhi salam and how all of these obligations in wudu that we perform, of washing the face, of wiping the head and wiping the feet, of washing the arms, all have to do with the spiritual purification that Nabi Adam alayhi salam himself had to go through after he had gone against the advice of Allah and had eaten from that tree. Because he had looked at the tree. His face had been facing the tree. Because of that, our faces need to be purified. Because he had reached for that, food, whether it was grapes or wheat, whatever it is. Because of that, our arms need to be purified. Because our arms reach for that sin as well. And because of us walking towards sin, we wipe our feet to spiritually purify our feet. And because of the shame and guilt that he had felt afterwards, he bowed his head and he put his hand on his head as a sign of guilt and remorse. And we do the same thing by wiping our head. So in a sense, we are recreating and carrying on that same spiritual purification of Nabi Adam alayhi salam. Right? That's one of the dimensions of wudu. We mentioned a few others as well. I'm not going to repeat those, inshallah. If anybody has any more questions, then we can discuss that at some other point. Tonight we want to continue on with that, with the next point. Now, normally when we do this series, we move on to the adhan. That's usually the next thing in the tartib, in the succession. That after wudu, technically the next thing in line is the adhan. Since tonight we are reciting the musibah of Qasim ibn al-Hasan, we've decided that the adhan, actually we're going to discuss that tomorrow night instead. Why? Because tomorrow night we'll be reciting and recounting the musibah of Ali al-Akbar. And because we know that he has this strong connection, association, and relationship with the adhan, we wanted to connect it to his personality instead. So we'll be delaying that discussion of the spiritual aspects of the adhan till tomorrow night. So we'll be going through a different discussion tonight. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So we're going to go a different direction instead. And in fact, since we started with technically the first wajib thing for salah, which is the wudu, we're going to move directly towards the next wajib thing. What is the next wajib thing, right? So we know the adhan is mustahab, iqama is mustahab. It doesn't need to be recited. It has a lot of value, which we'll mention tomorrow night, inshallah. But it's not wajib. After wudu, what is the next wajib thing for salah? Or another way of putting it, what is the first wajib thing for salah? Ahsan, right? Takbir. And Takbiratul Ihram has a very, very significant discussion. Right? It's the beginning, it's the way that we're beginning our salah. And there's a lot of interesting narrations about it as well. So let me start with one from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa alayhi wa sallam. He's reported to have said, لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَجْهٍ. Every single thing has a face, a wajh. Everything has a face. وَجْهُ دِينُكُمْ الصَّلَاةِ. The face of your deen is as-salah. Right? And this seems very similar to the other hadith that we talked about, right? That the flag of Islam is salah. So again, he's emphasizing that this is that face that we're showing to everybody else. We've talked about this before, that yeah, there's a lot of things that we as Muslims do which no other religion follows. But even other religions that have some sort of incantation or ritual prayer, whatever, nothing, no other religion has anything which is in the shape of our salah. We have something very, very specific. And as far as our timings as well, we're not once a week or once a month or anything else. 5 times a day we are performing this salah. So this is, again, a face of our religion. فَلَا يَشِيَنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ وَجْهُ الدِّينِ. So don't disgrace and don't deface and ruin the face of your deen. So in other words, Rasulullah is giving this advice to us that look, since you know that this is the face of your deen, the face of your religion, don't belittle it. Don't consider it nothing. Right? I mean, again, we were talking about physical appearance the other day as well too. If there's one thing that most of us, pre-mask generation, I guess, that was the most important thing for us to take care of is making sure that there's, our face was presentable, right? Even if, let's say, we didn't have time to iron our clothes before we go outside, or maybe do our hair or whatever it is, at the very least, we had to make sure our face was, presentable. So if there's, a stain somewhere, or if there's something in our teeth, we would make sure, to take care of that, right? So in this way, Rasulullah is trying to say, this is the face of your deen. Don't belittle it. Don't disgrace it. Don't let it become a source of disgrace for you. So pay attention to that. And then he continues, وَلِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ أَنَفٍ or أَنْفٍ. And for everything there's also literally a nose. So over there, okay, so everything has a face, but it also has a nose. Meaning what? There's something that has a specific center that sticks out more than anything else, right in the middle. The core axis, the nucleus, the most important part of it. وَأَنْفُ الصَّلَاةِ التَّكْبِيرِ. The nose, right, the center, the core of salah is the takbir. So this is, according to the words of Rasulullah, is a central component and one of the most important parts and components of our salah. So we have to make sure that we pay attention to this as well. So there's a few different things we can discuss, right? First, what exactly do we mean over here when we say takbir or takbiratul ihram? So takbir, especially for those of you who have some background in Arabic, you know that words like this that are on the pattern or the wazn of taf'il are all talking about actions. It's all performances. Normally, sometimes when we hear these words like takbir or tahleel or something like that, we just think about the words involved, right? Takbir, we just think of Allahu Akbar. We don't think of that there's an action behind it. There's something that we have to keep in mind. So takbir is clear. The root letters that are here are kaf, ba, ra, or kibr, or kabr. It's talking about something being large, or big, or esteemed, or grand. So takbir then is the action of making something grand or great. So the person who's performing or reciting this takbir is thinking of something or someone in their mind, and they are raising their status. They are elevating that thing or that individual, that person, that object. Now, naturally, when a person does that, whenever you raise something, by default, everything else then gets lowered, right? So for example, if you talk about how great, let's say, a certain restaurant is, like, this pizza place is great. It's the best pizza place that I've been to. When you talk about it like that, automatically every other pizza place will go down now because it can't be the best, right? Anytime that you talk about, let's say, an individual, this speaker, this alim, he's one of the greatest speakers I've ever heard. When you say that, then naturally every other speaker will have to lower their, in your eyes, their status is lowered too. So the idea of the takbir itself, when it's being performed properly, when we have that proper idea and niyyah and intention and orientation in our mind, is that Allah is something that we are putting above every single thing, every other thing, and all other things in reality. Ma siwallah, ma ghayrullah. Everything else has to be lowered, including ourselves, obviously. Everything else other than Allah, Allah has to take a lower position. So a takbir, when somebody is performing it, the idea is that they are putting Allah on a pedestal, on a station which no one else can ever match. And then, of course, by default, everything else has to become lowered as well. Now, when we do that, there's a way of just saying it out loud, but then there's a way of actually, backing up your words. If you're going to put Allah on this maqam, on this station, on this pedestal, and we're saying that everything else is lower, nothing can be compared to Allah. It's impossible. Okay, if that's the case, do your actions actually show that or not? And the takbiratul ihram is one of the most obvious ways whether you and I will show whether we are going to back up our words or not. How does that work? Well, let's explain, inshallah, if you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So that is takbir. Now let's go to the next word, ihram. Ihram is coming from haram or haram, right? Ha, ri, ra, and mi. And haram, we know it's something that's forbidden. Ihram, we also know from Hajj as well, right? For those of you who have performed it, or at least have heard the word before. Sometimes ihram, we call that libas, that people put on. But the reason that it's called ihram, even though it's libas al-ihram technically, the reason it's called that is because ihram is also a performance. It's something that we're doing. Ihram is the act of forbidding or making something haram on yourself. So in the case of Hajj, once you put on that specific clothing, right, which we normally call ihram, you're performing ihram. Why are you doing that? Because things which normally are halal for us, which we're allowed to do, once you put on that ihram, we make the niyyah and we start, then a bunch of things which were 1 second ago they were allowed, now all of a sudden we've made it haram on ourselves. Right? For example, looking in a mirror or putting on cologne or etar or perfume or something like that. Combing is not allowed. Right? Cutting nails, all of these things now we're making haram on ourselves, which before, not even just allowed. Some of those were mustahab, but when you put on the ihram, they become haram. Takbiratul ihram is the exact same thing. This takbir is us saying on one level that Allah, you are the greatest thing beyond anything that I can imagine or understand. And because of that greatness that you have, I am voluntarily making things haram on myself. When I am reciting this takbiratul ihram, when I am officiating and commencing and beginning this salah, this namaz, I am starting off by, the minute I say this and I start this, all of those things which before were halal for me, I am voluntarily, willingly making them haram on myself. That's why it's takbiratul ihram. So, we know there are many things which are fine right before salah. During the salah, ihya salah, you're not allowed to do them. Hina salah. For example, normal sort of talking. When you're in the middle of salah, you can't just say whatever you want, right? If somebody's calling you, let's say you're in the middle of reciting Surah Fatiha or Ruku or Sujood, you can't say, hold on a second, I'm reading salah, I'll get you in 5 minutes. You can't respond like that. You can't say that. Laughing, not allowed, when normally it would be fine. Even crying, if it's for the sake of the dunya, right? It's not recommended to cry for the sake of dunya, but at least before salah, you're allowed to do it, at least. It's not haram. But in salah, it's haram to cry for salah. Sorry, it's haram to cry for the sake of the dunya. Normally, outside of Salah, you can turn any direction that you want. You can spin around and twirl and jump around, do whatever you want. Once you recite that Takbiratul Ihram, you have to face the Qibla and you cannot turn or move from that direction. Even your face must always be in that direction. You can't even turn your face. If you turn your face outside of the direction of the Qibla, your Salah is batil. It's done, it's void, it's cancelled. And you have to redo it. All of these things are voluntary, right? Nobody is forcing us to read Salah, right? It's not something that is like breathing. Breathing, we have to do whether we like it or not. Our circulatory, or, all of our bodily functions, we don't have a choice whether we breathe or our heart's functions or any of these things. We don't have a choice necessarily. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to do all of that. Salah, every single Muslim is making that choice 3 or 5 times a day. We are volunteering and doing that. It's a show of force. It's a volition here. It's free will that we have. We are saying, Allah, I have free will at Fajr time, at Dhuhr Asr time, at Maghrib Isha time. I can do whatever I want. You have given me that free will and that ability. But because of your greatness, because of what you've done for me in my life, because of everything that you have blessed for me and for all of us, insan, and all creation, because you have mandated and given us this blessing of being able to talk to you, I am going to voluntarily throw my free will aside. I can normally talk, I can normally cry, I can normally eat or drink and do all these different things and move around. Say whatever I want, do whatever I want, but at least 3 to 5 times a day, I am going to give up my free will just for you. Because you are greater than my free will. Submitting to you is greater than anything else. Whatever I think is more important and is a priority means nothing when I'm thinking about you. And this is what the Takbiratul Ihram should, on one level, represent for us. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And it's from this idea that we can also understand, okay, why the sort of hands in this position, right? And just a few things here, since I haven't been watching people's takbir, but sometimes many community members may be a bit confused, right? People, when they perform their takbir, any of the takbirat, whether it's the mustahab ones or the wajib one, raising of the hands is mustahab itself. You don't have to do that. Whether it's the wajib, takbiratul ihram, or the mustahab ones. You don't have to raise your hands. It's mustahab. But if you do, there is a specific recommended way to do that, right? I've seen people do it in many different ways, right? I've seen the karate chop style, right? Where people are putting their hands like this. That's not the way you're supposed to do it. So it's not with hands, chopping down like that. That's not what you want. It's also not like the Mickey Mouse style where you're going like this too, right? You're not doing that as well. So the way that it's been mentioned in our riwayat, according to the majority of our maraji' and fuqaha, is that all of your fingers should be together, right? They should all be, closed like this. And basically the top of your middle finger should be reaching here at the bottom of your earlobe. That's as far as you should go. And it should be just to the side of your ears. That's it. No farther back here or not there. And basically as you are saying Allahu Akbar, that's where you would stop over here. Some ulama say it's Allahu Akbar all the way down. Most of them would say it's Allahu Akbar. And then when you finish the Akbar, that's when you would end up over here. There's a slight difference over there. You can check with your own marja about what differences they may have there. Most books of fiqh will have those sort of details, and you can refer to those inshallah. But some say, okay, what's the point? What does that mean? What's the significance of keeping hands like that in the first place? Well, I think some of these things are obvious because these are normal things that we perform in our life. Well, let me take that back. We don't normally perform them, but we understand the action when we see it. We understand why somebody would have that hand movement. So when, let's just say, a cop, police officer, puts a gun in your face and says, freeze, what do you do with your hands? You put them up. But because why? What are you showing? You're showing that, you have authority, you have power, I'm completely submitting to what you have to say, whatever you want. I'm showing you that I have no control in this situation. That's what those hand motions are representing. When you're saying that takbiratul ihram, you're saying, Allah, I'm submitting to you as the higher power. I'm giving up everything. I'm giving up that control. I'm giving up my free will. I submit to your authority fully. That's what I'm doing. Others have another interpretation or another explanation of this as well. Because, this sort of movement represents, showing submission, giving up control, or showing that humility and fear. But there's another side of it that some ulama have mentioned as well. They say, sometimes whenever I'll give you the story. I guess maybe it'll become clear there. So they have these stories, right? Do I want to mention the story or not? I'm not sure. Okay, I'll leave the story aside, because of lack of time. You know how sometimes when you're offering your salah, the only thing on your mind is something other than salah. You're not thinking about what you're reciting. You're not thinking about the surah or the dhikr or any of those things. You're thinking about some TV show, or you're thinking about a problem you're having with your spouse or your kids or your parents or a cousin or an uncle or aunt or something like that, some family issue. You're thinking about some problem you're having at work, or maybe an interview that you have, anything else but salah, but Allah. You're thinking about some other thing in your mind. And the whole time during salah, you're trying to solve it, or your mind, your heart, your mind, your soul is being stressed out by that. And sometimes the whole salah is basically us just going through, trying to figure out how to solve that thing. It's tough sometimes, right, keeping our concentration. It's not an easy thing to do. So I'm not trying to belittle anybody. I have the same problem constantly. It's not an easy thing to be able to be fully concentrated during salah. We have one of the great warafa, I don't remember his name, maybe some of you will remember, you can remind me afterwards. They say that one day, as he was going towards leading the salah at a local masjid, as he was going there, his students, normally in these places like Iran or Iraq, any of these Muslim countries, where you have, when the alim or the imam of the masjid leaves their house, around adhan time or a little bit before the adhan time, they start making their way towards the masjid to leave, right? So sometimes the people who are Ahl al-Masjid, who live in that area or live near that imam, that sheikh, that maulana, they wait outside their house, or they wait outside their own house and wait till they pass by and they start following them, right? And they have conversations. The imam will ask them, how are you doing, this and that, things like that. It's a nice way for community building. Unfortunately, we don't really have that opportunity here necessarily. But khair. So a bunch of these people, these students would also come and they jump to this arif as he was making his way to the masjid to lead salah. And they do this every day, so they have an understanding, right? They have a connection with this sheikh, with this great arif. So they know his normal halat, they know his normal states, they know the normal emotional stations that he has. But they say this one day, we saw him and we saw him so happy, smiling so much, we've never seen him like this before. So they say, something must have happened. We're wondering, okay, so they had, Ya sheikh, what exactly happened to you? Why are you smiling like this right now? He said, today is the first time that I've been able to fully concentrate in my salah. He said, I've been working on this for 25 years. And this was the first day that I was able to fully concentrate on my salah. That I know that Allah revealed to me that my salah was fully for Him with ikhlas, not for somebody else. Not when I was leading, it was for you to hear me, or I didn't feel good about leading you. None of that was there. It was purely for the sake of Allah. So I'm happy that Allah has provided me with that ability and that blessing. Now this is a grand arif, a great sage, a great master. He says 25 years he's been working on that. So the reason I'm mentioning this story is because a lot of us, people, they ask me this question all the time. I can't concentrate. I don't know what to do. I barely can concentrate, 1 second of the salah. Sometimes after the takbiratul ihram, I'm done. My mind's somewhere else. I said, if you can just concentrate for the takbiratul ihram, that's a huge deal. You wouldn't believe it. A lot of us, we can't even concentrate there, right? Again, just like robots, we recite the whole salah 5 times a day and we're done. We have no idea what we're doing. If we can even concentrate for 1 to 2, maybe 5 seconds, that's a big, big deal. So don't get, bogged down, or don't feel bad or depressed or stressed out if you don't have full concentration throughout the salah. Don't feel bad if you can't even concentrate through 1 rak'ah. Don't feel bad if you can't even concentrate through 1 surah. If you can just do the takbiratul ihram, that's a huge, huge deal. And hopefully with some of these points, we can recognize that if I can understand that I'm submitting myself to Allah, and now I'm going to the point that we were mentioning here, that when I'm making this hand motion, what some of the ulama say is imagine yourself, imagine your hands acting as these spiritual internal brooms. And what you're doing as you slowly bringing them up, saying Allahu Akbar, as you're doing that, you are slowly, in your mind, in your heart, in your soul, you are imagining all these different dunyawi issues that you have. All of those problems that you're facing right now, or that you faced yesterday or last week. All the things that you say, bring them to your mind right now. Don't wait till the middle of your salah. Bring them to your mind right now. But as you are reciting that takbir, start recognizing that Allah is greater than that, greater than that, greater than that. So you wipe all of these away. And by the time you say Allahu Akbar, you reach the top, you should have wiped and boomed them and swept all of those things away. He said, all that I should be left with is Allah on my mind. So they say this is another way that you can practically apply this hand movement of submission and humility and khushu' to our takbiratul ihram or to any of your takbirat that you recite. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So this takbiratul ihram can be the greatest misdaq or manifestation of this famous saying, this ayah that we have in the Quran constantly, right? Sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. Allah, when we hear that adhan, we say, labbaik, Allah, we're there. I put down everything else, all the other things in my life, my work, my family, everything else is done, and I go right away to that salah. And some of these things, inshallah, we're also going to mention tomorrow night about how the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam themselves, once they heard the adhan, when the waqt salah began, even their states would change as well. And we'll describe that, how they have been mentioned in the riwayat and ahadith. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Let me share with you some other narrations that we have. I'll share one narration and then one recommendation from one of our greater ulama about takbir as well. And if we have time, then maybe we'll do a few other things, but let's see how much we can get. So this is coming from our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, who is giving some advice about what should our state of mind be when we perform this takbir. Again, I'm trying to stay away from the word recite. We don't want to just be parrots or robots. We want to perform takbir now, right? Change our whole mindset, our orientation. So when you perform and say Allahu Akbar, by the way, let me stop there too, right? So remember how we were mentioning the proper performance of it. We should also, especially since at least the beginning takbiratul ihram is wajib, and we know that having the proper makhraj and pronunciation is also wajib, we should think to ourselves, am I pronouncing this correct or not? I know that many of us may have been raised in our countries, in certain families or in our households, especially maybe if even Arabic wasn't our first language, with different or improper pronunciations of that, right? You know, sometimes we're saying like, I've heard people say Allahu Akbar or Allahu Akbar or things like that, right? So we want to make sure that we're trying to say it properly, Allahu Akbar, right? To try to pronounce it like that. Right? So we can maybe be a bit more cognizant of our pronunciation. Again, you try your best. We're not asking for the perfection here, but Allah will, of course, understand your niyyah and what ability you have. So the sixth Imam here says, whenever you perform and say Allahu Akbar, make sure you have full ma'rifah. You truly understand what you're saying and what you're doing. And you also have iman and yaqeen and believe that whatever is bayn as-samawat wal ard, whatever is between those higher dimensions and those lower dimensions, meaning the malakut, the jabarut, the alam barzakh, and of course the dunya, every single dimension, right? Not just heavens and earth as some people translate it. Make sure you have ma'rifah, you have iman, you truly understand that every single thing between all of these higher and lower realms, nothing is compared to the magnificence, the jalal, the beauty of Allah. Nothing. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks into the qalbul abd, if he looks into that servant's heart, and that while this abd is reciting and performing their takbir, and he sees something, and he sees a tanaqud, he sees a contradiction, he sees takdeeb and kadhib, he sees a lie in this person's heart, he says, Allah will address this person and say, a kadhab, liar. You are a liar. Don't say Allahu Akbar because you don't believe in it. You don't act upon this. And Allah will respond to this person and say, are you lying and deceiving me? I swear by my might, my magnificence, I will deprive you of tasting the sweetness of my dhikr. And I will exclude you from my qurba, my proximity and taqarrub. And I will deprive you from gaining rida and pleasure from this sort of supplication. So we have to be very, very careful that we're not doing this like parrots. Now, again, We have to make sure we're working on this in baby steps. I know this is a very sort of strong and harsh riwayah. The reason I'm mentioning something like this is so that we have a higher goal, a loftier goal that we can reach to as well, right? It's not simply just say it and get it done with. Say it and try to have some level there. Again, hopefully, inshallah, for our Fajr prayers tomorrow morning, we can keep all these points that we've mentioned in mind, right? At the very least, Allah, all those things now, right? Maybe I'm tired, maybe I'm thinking about work or family, whatever. I'm pushing all of that aside and saying, Allahu Akbar, you're greater than that. Even if you can do just that for a few seconds, when you recite that Takbiratul Ihram, and let's say right after that, maybe all those problems come right back to your mind. At the very least, for 1 second, you change your niyyah and you faced Allah. And Allah will say, you tried your best. You tried to change your niyyah. You tried not to deceive me. And Allah will, of course, inshallah, appreciate that. So we have to try this as well. Let me share something else from one of our greatest warafa and muhaqqiqeen and muhaddithin, Mullah Muhsin Faid Kashani, rahmatullah alayh. In one of his books, he talks about this idea of takbir as well. And he says, whenever you obtain and gain this rida, this sweetness, this pleasure during your salah, then know that it's because your takbiratul ihram was maqbool, it was accepted. That's why that prayer now has value to you. That's why your salah feels so good now. Because you tried, you put effort in your takbir. He said that Allah has made your takbir maqbool. He's accepted. He's done taqabbul of it. Allah has taken your takbir. Right? So basically he's giving the pretty much other side, or following through on that hadith and that narration. If I'm not mistaken, I think this may be a commentary of his on this narration, but I'm not positive. I don't have that in my notes. And then he gives the opposite side. If it's not, meaning if your salah, you don't really feel anything there, if you don't put any effort in your takbir, then you should feel as though Allah has expelled you from His court. You won't feel that proximity. You won't feel that closest to Allah. Allah won't do taqabbul. He won't do qabul and accept what you are trying to confirm and affirm. He won't accept it. And instead you will be regarded as a kadhab and a liar. So pretty much he's just explaining and adding on to this narration as well. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Inshallah, I think we will end for tonight on this point. There's a few other things I wanted to mention. Maybe I'll save them for tomorrow night if we have some time in the beginning. But as I said, tomorrow night we will discuss the importance and the value of the adhan, especially because we will be at that night, tomorrow night, we'll be going through the musibah of Ali al-Akbar, and he has that connection and that importance and that relationship with the adhan. That's why we wanted to delay the discussion on the adhan till tomorrow night. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. But tonight, we will be opening our hearts and giving our condolences and pouring out these tears for a different personality. Someone who wasn't as old as Ali al-Akbar, but somebody still who was from Bani Hashim, who still had a high status, even at his young age. On the night of Ashura, according to some of our riwayat and books of history, Imam Hussein has gathered everyone together. And he's telling his ashab and his family members about what's going to transpire on the Asr of Ashura. What's going to happen on the next day. And he's beginning to tell each of them different things, right? Tomorrow, all of us will become shaheed. All of us will have a special maqam in Jannah. In some riwayat say he actually began to show every single person there, their station, their maqam in Jannah. And at this point, they say, Qasim ibn Hassan, his nephew, was there as well. And he wasn't directly addressed in that gathering. So he came running to Imam Hussein. He said, Ya Amma, wa ana mimman yuqtil ghada. Am I going to be amongst those who is killed tomorrow as well? Will I become shaheed tomorrow as well? Now, understand, he's not asking because he's afraid. He's not afraid of death. That's not his reason for asking. He wants to know, does he have the honor, just like his family members, his cousins, his uncles, his friends? Does he have that same honor? Will he get that same blessing from Allah as well? Will he have the honor of shahada? And of course, as we know, many of you remember, Imam Hussein doesn't give him a direct answer and just say yes. He wants to test Qasim, but at the same time, perhaps give us a lesson as well, to show us what a young boy, what a young person is capable of. What station are they ready for? What type of ma'rifah of Allah can they have at that young age? Ya Qasim, qul li, tell me Qasim, Ya Qasim, kayfa al-mawt 'indak? You tell me, what do you think about death? When you think about death, tell me, what does it feel like to you? How does it sound to you? What comes to your mind when you're thinking about maut? And we have those very, very famous words, ahla min al-asr. Death, to me, Qasim says, is sweeter than honey. Can you imagine anyone that we know in the modern generation, that age, approximately 10, 12, maybe 13, 14 years old maximum, giving an answer like this? Many of us in our elder ages, we are scared of death. But you have Qasim ibn al-Hasan, somebody who's Banu Hashim, somebody who's been trained with the ma'rifat of Allah, somebody who's connected to the Imam of his time, somebody who's ready to give his life for Islam, saying that I am ready to die and it's sweeter to me than honey. Ya Qasim, we wish that we could be at a station like you. But Qasim is not satisfied with this line of questioning and reasoning. He says, Ya Amma, tell me please, tell me, am I going to become shaheed or not? But some riwayat, what they say is Hussein still does not answer him directly. He says he gives an indirect answer. He says, Ya Qasim, even my Abdullah, even Ali al-Asghar will become shaheed tomorrow. At this point, Qasim becomes surprised. He says, Amma, are you saying that these Urdu, these enemies, A'da, they're going to come into our tents to kill him? Is that what's going to happen? Hussein says, Ya Qasim, no, that's not what will happen. I myself will take him out on the battlefield, on the desert plains of Karbala, and they will shoot an arrow into him. That's how he will become shaheed. And some narrations say this is why all night Qasim was crying on the night of Ashura. They say this was the reason why. Not out of fear of death or anything else, not out of missing his father, but because he found out what was going to happen to his cousin. This is why he was crying all night. How could Hussein tell him the full truth? How could he say, no, Qasim, actually you are right. The enemies will come inside the tents, but not for Abdullah. They will come inside and they will burn the tents. And they will take the earrings off of Ruqayya's ears directly. They will come and humiliate the women of Ahlul Bayt. On the day of Ashura, one by one, the shuhada go out and they go and perform their jihad. They go out and they give their lives. At this point, Qasim is constantly coming to Hussein, his uncle, and saying, Ya Amma, give me ijazah, give me permission, let me go as well. Everybody else is going, it's my turn now, let me go and fight and become shaheed as well. And Hussein kept turning his face away and he said, how can I do this? This is my nephew. This is the amana that I have for my brother Hassan. How can I just let him go out and die like this? And they say Qasim was trying his best to get permission. They said Qasim fell down at the feet of Hussein and began kissing his feet. Say, Amma, please let me go. He was kissing his hands and kissing him all over. Please, Amma, let me go out and fight as well. Please let me go for jihad. Let me go. Hussein's heart is broken, but Qasim's heart is even more broken now. As we know, whenever a child's heart is devastated, who do they run to? They run back to their mother. Qasim runs back to Farwa. And he comes to Farwa and says, I need your help. I need your help. I need to know, Ummah, what do I do here? My uncle won't let me go out. You need to help me. Tell my uncle Hussein to let me go out and fight. Now, what would Farwa be thinking in this moment? She said, well, I remember Zainab, when Hussein would not let Aoun and Muhammad go, Zainab went to Hussein and got permission. She said, no, you have to let Aoun and Muhammad go. These are my wakala, they are my wakils, they are my representatives, they are the representatives of their father, you have to let them go as well. But Farwa is thinking to herself, this is the sister of Hussein, who am I? I don't have the right to go to Hussein and ask for anything for him. I can't do anything like this. So now Farwa's heart is broken as well. She is wondering, what do I do in this case? And then she remembers at this point that her husband, Imam Hassan, had left behind something special for her that said, when you are in this stage, when you are going through difficulty, when you need a request fulfilled, open up this ta'weed, this amulet, this treasure box, and there will be something in there which is left for you and for my son. So when they go to this and they open this up, they find all of these different things inside. One of these things that they find are 2 letters. One letter they see is addressed for Farwa and Qasim, and the other letter is directly addressed to Imam Hussein. Qasim opens up the letter from Imam Hassan, and Farwa and Qasim begin reading this letter together and begin crying as they see these words from their deceased and departed person, their Imam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya Qasim, Ya Bunayya. I won't be there. I won't be able to defend my brother Hussein at Karbala when he is most in need. You are my wakil at Karbala. You will represent me at Karbala. When you see your uncle surrounded on all sides, go forward. Don't hesitate and sacrifice yourself for him. Qasim now is crying, but it's not tears of regret. It's not tears of fear. He's now crying out of tears of joy, saying, this is what I need now. This is exactly what I need to give to my Ammu Hussein. He takes the other letter. He goes and he begins walking towards the tent of Hussein. According to some of according to some of the riwayat and narrators of history, they say Hussein all of a sudden says, I smell the fragrance of my brother Hussein. Ya Akha Hassan. Hussein says, I smell the fragrance of my brother Hassan. I haven't smelled this beautiful fragrance in years. When Qasim comes with that letter, he says, I know this fragrance. He takes the letter, he begins to kiss it. He opens it and he sees the beautiful handwriting of his brother Hassan. He begins reading it and immediately he begins crying as well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya Akha, Ya Hussein. Don't stop my Qasim. Don't stop him from going out and fighting for you and sacrificing himself for you. Because you know I will not be there to protect you. My Qasim is my wakil. I'm leaving him behind. He is now entrusted to you. I have left him for you to protect, but now your job is to allow him to go and to defend you. Remember, La yawma ka yawmka ya Aba Abdullah. Remember, this is not a final request from one brother, an older brother to a younger brother. This is the Imam of Hussein. Imam Hassan was Hussein's Imam. This is the final amr and command of Imam Hassan to Imam Hussein. When Imam Hussein finishes reading the letter, they say that Qasim and Hussein began hugging each other out of love and respect for Imam Hassan, and they began crying so intensely, so profusely, that they said both of them fainted, became unconscious for some time. When they woke up, and they dried their tears, Hussein tells Qasim, now you have ijazah from me. How can I deny my Imam? How can I deny my brother? But you have to take permission from your mother and from your aunt Zainab. Farwa takes Qasim around to all of the women. He says al-wida and gives his final salams. Hussein then, he comes back to Hussein, and Hussein begins to prepare him for battle. They say he took this piece of cloth, he tore this cloth into two pieces. One piece he takes and he wraps it around the head of Qasim as an imama, as a turban, the shine of honor, this taj al-mu'min, this crown on the head of Qasim. The other, they say, according to the riwayat, Hussein took and covered the chest of Qasim. We would say to Hussein, Qasim hasn't even gone out to battle yet. Qasim is still alive, but Hussein, you are already wrapping a kafan on the body of Qasim. It's as if you know what's going to happen to the body of Qasim. Just like his cousin An Muhammad, he wasn't able to get on this horse by himself. So Hussein and Abbas come and help him on top of this horse. As he begins to ride out to the battlefield, his mother Farwa is watching him. And they say Qasim keeps turning around and looking at his mother a few more times over and over again to see his mother for one last time. When Qasim comes out to the battlefield, the enemies see this young boy, and they say that, according to the narration, they say, we saw this bright, full crescent moon coming towards us. We have never seen such a beautiful person in our lives. We are blinded by the amount of moon coming from the son of Hassan. How can we attack and kill such a beautiful child? So some of the enemies refused to fight immediately until some of the orders were given of all the different types of rewards and the jaza'at that were going to be given to those who want to kill Qasim ibn Hassan. Finally, one mal'oon gets up and says, I am going to hit this boy so hard that Hussein will feel this pain in his chest and his back as well. He grabs a stiff iron rod. He sneaks up behind Qasim when Qasim leans over because his sandal became undone. He leaned over on his horse and tried to fix his sandal. When he did this mal'oon came behind Qasim, took this iron rod and struck with all of the strength that he had and broke the spine of Qasim. Qasim falls down off of his horse in pain, crying and screaming out for Uncle Hussein, Amma darikni, Amma darikni. They say Hussein and Abbas, when they heard these cries, they began running towards Qasim like fierce lions and charging towards the place where Qasim had fallen down. when the enemies saw Qamar Bani Hashim, when they saw Hussein coming, they began to get fearful and scared, and they began running away immediately. Because of the immediate fear of the horses and the enemy soldiers, when they began running in all these different directions, dust started to come in all different places around the bodies and everything that was there. So no one was able to see where they were going, so they just went in every single direction. Left, right, forward, backwards. They were just going without seeing what they were doing or where they were going. Do you know mu'mineen, mu'minat, azadaran, that every single other shaheed, before they cried, they called out to their Mawla Hussein just once, and Imam Hussein, and usually Abbas came running towards them. They say when Hur fell, he said, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, and Imam Hussein and Abbas came running towards them. When Abbas fell, he even said, Alayka minni akhir salam. Hussein ran towards him, right, just for that one cry. But they say when Qasim fell, he cried out over and over and over again multiple times. But each time when he was crying out for Hussein, they say that his voice became weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And Hussein was wondering, why can't we find Qasim? What's happening to him? And they say, we know the reasons why. Because all that dust, when it had gone in all different directions, the horses were going back and forth and trampling over the body of Qasim, breaking all of his bones. This was the only Shaheed of Karbala who was trampled while he was still alive. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الثاني على حب الزهراء البتول. الثالث على حب الحسن والحسين بأعلى أصواتكم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة يا غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء صلى الله عليك وعلى ابن أخيك القاسم بن الحسن وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما يا دوحة المجد من فهر ومن مضر قد جف ماء الصبا في غصنك النظر يا درة غادرت أصدافها فعلت حتى غلت ثمنا عن سائر الدرر قد غال خسف الردى بدر الهدى فيا نجوم السماء من بعدهن تذري استصغرته الأعداء حين دعا إلى البراز فلاقت أعظم الخطر النجم فوق السماء ليست بذي صغر وإن رأته عيون الناس في صغره واغتال مفرقه الأزدي بمرهفه فخر لكن بخد منه منعفر إن يبكي عمه حزنا لمصرعه فما بكى قمر إلا على قمري يا ساعد الله قلب الصبط ينظره فردا ولم يبلغ 20 في العمر ما كنت آمل أن أبقي وأنت على وجه الصعيد ضجيع الصخر والحجر مرملا مذ رأته رملة صرخت يا مهجتي وسروري يا ضياء بصري صاحب صوت عالي اسرع يا عمي تراني تخضبت من فيض دمي يا عمي من الطبر قطعوا جسمي ولا ظل عظم سالم ما تهشم لفاي الحومة الميدان عمه لقى مطروح ومعفر بدمه حين ضلوعه عليه وقعد يمه يشمه وعن جبينه يمسح الدم عندما قتل جميع أصحاب الحسين وأهل بيته أخذ ينادي الحسين وغربته وقلة ناصرا أما من معين يعيننا أما من ناصر ينصرنا أما من ذاب عنا يذب عنا. فخرج القاسم من الخيمة يبكي لاستغاثة عمه وهو غلام لم يبلغ الحلم. عندما توفي الإمام الحسن عليه السلام كان عمر القاسم عليه السلام 4 سنوات، فأخذه الحسين وتكفل بتربيته، فكان له الولد العزيز والمدلل لأن باسم الإمام الحسن عليه السلام، فقد كان يحبه حبا شديدا. ومثال على حبه عندما طلب القاسم الخروج للقتال، فيذكر في التاريخ أن الإمام الحسين لم يغشى عليه من كثرة البكاء عندما ودع حتى علي الأكبر، ولكن هذه الحالة مختلفة عندما ودع القاسم ابن الحسن ابن أخيه. يقال عند وداع القاسم للحسين عليه السلام أرخى عينيه بالدموع الإمام الحسين، تذكر أخيه الحسن عندما أقبل القاسم على عمه يستأذنه في القتال، نظر إليه الحسين فلم يملك نفسه فاعتنقه وجعلا يبكيان بكاء شديدا حتى أغشي عليهما. فلما أفاق طلب القاسم المبارزة، قال يا عمار لا طاقة لي على البقاء، وأرى بني عمومتي وإخوتي مجزري. يراهم أمامه الكل قتلى، يرى عمه يستغيث يقول لا طاقة لي على البقاء وأراك وحيدا فريدا يا عما. فصار القاسم يتوسل بالحسين، يقبل يدي الحسين، يقبل رجلي الحسين. فقال له عمه الحسين يا ولدي أتمشي برجلك إلى الموت؟ فقال وكيف يا عم وأنت بقيت بين الأعداء وحيدا فريدا، لم تجد ناصرا ولا معينا، روحي لروحك الفداء ونفسي لنفسك الوقاء. فبكى الحسين ثم أذن له للخروج إلى القتال. فخرج القاسم وبيده سيف ووجهه كفلقة قمر وعليه قميص وإزار وفي رجليه نعلان. فبينما كان القاسم يقاتل قتال الأبطال إذ انقطع شسع نعله اليسرى فوقف ليشدها، فشد ملعون على الغلام وضربه بالسيف على رأسه، فوقع القاسم على وجهه وصاح أدركني يا عماه أدركني يا عماه. فسمع الحسين صوت استغاثة القاسم فركض على مصرع القاسم عليه السلام ورآه يفحص بيده ورجليه ويجود بنفسه، فقال الحسين: عز والله على عمك أن تدعوه فلا يجيبك، أو يجيبك فلا يعينك، بعدا لقوم قتلوك وخصمهم يوم القيامة جدك وأبوك. يقل له ونادى: يا قاسم ايش بيدي؟ ريت السيف قبلك حزور ايدي، هان الكوم تخلوني وحيدي، وعلى الخيام يا عمي، وعلى الخيام يا عمي الخيل تفتر. يا عم ايش قالت من الصبر روحك؟ يا ابويا ما تراويني جروحك، لو ان ابقى يا عمي كنت نروحك بقلب مثل الغضيب وبدمع محمر. نزل إليه الحسين ووضع صدره الشريف على صدر القاسم، ثم اعتنقه وكان يبكي. الإمام حمله على صدره وهو مشقوق الهامة مثخن بالجراح. ساعد الله قلبك يا أبا عبد الله، وأنت ترى وديعة أخيك الحسن مغسلا بدمائه. سيدي أبا عبد الله، ما كنت تقول وأنت تحمله إلى الخيمة؟ ممكن يتذكر أخاه الحسن، يرى وديعة أخيه الحسن في هذه الحالة. يقول له: يا عمي من شرق هارتك نصين، يا بعد أهلي صواب اليوجعك وين، يا عم شلون اشيلك للصواوي وانت من الطبور جسمك مخذب. كان الحسين يبكي عندما كان يحمله نحو الخيام وينادي: يا ابن أخي أنت الوديعة. فجاء به حتى ألقاه بين القتلى من أهل بيته في الخيام. فلما سمعت النساء صراخ الحسين أقبلن إليه وهن يبكين لاطمات الوجوه، تتقدمهن أم القاسم رملة وعمته زينب أتين إلى الخيمة جابا ومددا ما بين أخوته، قعد عندهم يا ويلي وهم موته، بس من سمع النسوان صوته اجت رملة تصيح الله اكبر، اجت رملة تصيح الله اكبر. فلما وصلت رملة ووصلت زينب ألقين بأنفسهن عليه، وأمه تنادي، ترى ابنه مقطع مهشم الأعضاء، تنادي: وولدا وقاسما رملة تصيح رملة تصيح يا وليدي يا جسايا، عمت عيني عمت عيني على التربان نايم، عمت عيني على التربان نايم، تردني من الحروب ظليت سالم، ولن جسمك بدم مخضبين. يا ابني يا جاسم جيت اشمك وبدمعي امشي جروح جسمك، دقعيد يا من لا ظلت امك، ظل قلبي يا ابني يحوم يمك، رزء تكاد السماء تهوي لمصرعه، إن يبكي عمه حزنا لمصرعه. أي قدايان روكني دم شاب كآقا قاسم است، تا سحر پیمان ریز کاسه ما قاسم است، زیر سم اسبها با هر نفس قد می کشید، گفت با گریه حسین این تن خدایا قاسم است. چند بیتی هم از زبان خود قاسم میگه من را پدر به دست عمو داد و بعد از آن با یک نفر خوشم که همان است جان من، شیرینی محبت او چیز دیگری است، احلی من العسل شده ورد زبان من، باید وصیت پدرم را عمل کنم، هرچه به جز فدا شدن من زیان من، شمشیرها بریده مرا کنید، مظلومی حسین برید امان من، گلبرگ های جسم مرا پخش کرده اید، شادم از این که آمده وقت خزان من، حرف از عموی من نزنید ای سوارها، ای نعلها برای شما استخوان من، آنقدر به روی بدنم اسب آورید، در تربت حسین بماند نشان من. انا لله و انا الیه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل بيت محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله أن تشافي وتعافي مرضانا ومرضى المؤمنين. اللهم ارحم موتانا وموتى من مات على الإيمان وموتى الحاضرين. اللهم اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا. اللهم تقبل أعمالنا بحق هذه المجالس وبحرمة مولانا صاحب الأمر والزمان. رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة يسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
من به قربان تو گلهای پرپر حسین، من به قربان تو گلهای پرپر حسین، من به قربان تو قاسم و اکبر حسین، من به قربان تو قاسم و اکبر حسین، من به قربان تو قاسم و اکبر حسین، من به قربان تو گلهای پرپر حسین، من به قربان تو گلهای پرپر حسین، من به قربان تو گلهای پرپر حسین، من به قربان تو قاسم و اکبر حسین، من به قربان تو ناله ربت، من به قربان تو ناله ربت، من به قربان تن بخون شناور حسین، من به قربان تن بخون شناور حسین، من به قربان تن بخون شناور حسین، من به قربان تو با خون وضو گرفتنت، من به قربان تو با خون وضو گرفتنت، من به قربان تو نماز آخر حسین، من به قربان تو نماز آخر حسین، من به قربان تو گلهای پرپر حسین، من به قربان تو گلهای پرپر حسین، من به قربان تو قاسم و اکبر حسین، من به قربان تو قاسم و اکبر حسین، بمیرم برات، بمیرم برات که لب تشنه تو رو سر بریدن، بمیرم من برات که لب تشنه سر تو رو بریدن، بمیرم برات که خم شد کمرت تو قلقمه، بمیرم برات که خم شد کمرت تو قلقمه، وقتی دیدی قلب خون نقش برادر حسین، وقتی دیدی قلب خون نقش برادر حسین، شنیدم که کوفیان به بچه ها آب ندادن، شنیدم که کوفیان به بچه ها آب ندادن، تیر زدن به جای آب به حلق اصغر حسین، تیر زدن به جای آب به حلق اصغر حسین، شنیدم زمانی که سر از تنت شن می‌برید، شنیدم زمانی که شنیدم زمانی که سرستر از شعر میمونی میامد تو قدگه صدای مادر حسین میامد تو قدگه صدای مادر حسین من به قربان تو و گلهای بربرت حسین من به قربان تو و من به قربان تو و گلهای بربرت حسین من به قربان تو و قاسم و اکبر حسین من به قربان تو و قاسم و اکبر حسین بمیرم برات که لب تشنه تو را سر بریدم بمیرم برات که لب تشنه تو را سر بریدم بمیرم برات که خم شد کمرت تو قلقمه وقتی دیدی غرق خون نقش برادرت حسین وقتی دیدی غرق خون نقش برادرت حسین شنیدم که کوفیان به بچه ها آب ندادن تیر زدن به جای آب به حلق اصغر حسین تیر زدن به جای آب به حلق اصغر حسین شنیدم زمانی که سر از تن از شم میبرید شنیدم زمانی که سر از تن از شم میبرید میومد تو قدگه صدای مادرت حسین میومد تو قدگه صدای مادرت حسین دلم آتیش میگیره وقتی میگن که خواهرت جای مادر پوستت بر رگ خنجر حسین جای مادر پوستت بر رگ خنجر حسین جای مادر پوستت بر رگ خنجر حسین به فدا که آمدی کنج خرابه می بشم به فدا که آمدی کنج خرابه می بشم که تراحت جان بده 3 سال دخترت حسین که تراحت جان بده 3 سال دخترت حسین یا حسین تو جان دادی که بار ذلت نکشی یا حسین تو جان دادی که بار ذلت نکشی پاره پاره شد تنت به تیر نیزه پاره پاره شده تنت به نیزه شد سرت زمین پاره پاره شد تنت به نیزه شد سرت حسین پاره پاره شد تنت به نیزه شد سرت حسین من به قربان تو و گلهای بربرت حسین من به قربان تو و گلهای بربرت حسین من به قربان تو و قاسم و اکبرت حسین من به قربان تو و قاسم و اکبرت حسین من به قربان تو و ناله را رفت من به قربان تن به خون شناورت حسین من به قربان تو به خون شناورت حسین من به قربان تو با خون وضو گرفتنت من به قربان تو نماز آخرت حسین من به قربان تو نماز آخرت حسین بمیرم برات که لب تشنه تو رو سر بریدم بمیرم برات که خم شد کمرت تو قلقمه وقتی دید غرق خون نعش برادرت حسین وقتی دید غرق خون نعش برادرت حسین شنیدم که کوفیان به بچه ها آب ندادن شنیدم که کوفیان به بچه ها آب ندادن تیر زدن به جای آب به حلق اصغر حسین تیر زدن به جای آب به حلق اصغر حسین شنیدم زمانی که سر از شعر میبری شنیدم زمانی که سر از شعر میبری میومد تو قدگه صدای مادرت حسین میومد تو قدگه صدای مادرت حسین دلم آتش میگیره وقتی میگن که خواهرت دلم آتش میگیره وقتی که دلم آتش میگیره وقتی میگن که خواهرت جای مادر بوسه زد بر رگ منجرت حسین جای مادر بوسه زد بر رگ حنجر حسین من به قربان تو و گلهای بربر حسین من به قربان تو و گلهای بربر حسین من به قربان تو و قاسم و اکبر حسین من به قربان تو و قاسم و اکبر حسین یا حسین یا حسین
Qasim, 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 your uncle's here, son of my brother dear, Hassan's own flesh and hair, nephew whom I adore. I see him when I see you, I feel him when I'm with you. Now what will your uncle do? He can't see you anymore. It's hard, Qasim, when I see that you can't answer me, trampled beneath the feet of killers without regret. So many are fighting us, of those who invited us, and few will do right by us, by when the sun will have set. Qasim, 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 you're dragging your armor there, your boyish face soft and fair, you're hardly a man, and yet you rush to your Lord's defense. A death that is hard and cruel, and yet seems so sweet to you, will take you to Calvary school, fragrant like frankincense. You look toward your uncle's way and wonder what he will say. Today was your truest day in all of your 13 years. We're all just so proud of you, and Fatima stands here too with Ali and the Rasul. They look on Hassan with tears. Qasim, 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 Qasim. يا حسين والصابر يا حسين والصابر يا حسين والصابر الشهادة أمي حنت شفيه كل على عرسك ألف حبي واسفيه يا حسين وعيون أمك بيالي التطفيه يا حسين اسمعوا وياي خلينا هاي اليوم مدبرين يوم بس مجرد نتذكر الحزن ان شاء الله هاي الليله يوم ذكريني من تمر زفت شباب للعرس محروم حنيتي دم المصاب الحضره خلي يقرأ وياي يوم ذكريني من تمر زفت شباب للعرس محروم وحنيتي دم المصاب شمعة شبابي مني طفوها حنيتي دمي والجفن دار التراب يوم ذكريني من تمر زفت شباب من ثدي النيفة راضع بصاف الحليب وبهالشهادة صار لي قسمة ونصيب حفرتي بدمي خلها يفرشوها حنيتي دمي والجفن دار التراب يوم ذكريني من تمر زفت شباب بين لحم ذهبه هذا شبل المجتبى بين لحم ذهبه هذا شبل المجتبى هذا شبل المجتبى بين لحم ذهبه هذا شبل المجتبى هذا شبل من طلع شبل الحسن وزاد للحمى اعتنى يشبه اللي ذي الغضنفر يشبه اللي ذي الغضنفر لو طلع من مكمنه بيدلع الصارم من عنده يتقاطر اجل واقف بين دمانه والامر عما امتثل والامر عما امتثل قال له شنو الموت عندك قال له احلى من العسل قال له احلى من العسل عندي كاس الموت عندي احلى من كاس الهنا كل شجاع يجاوبه كل شجاع يجاوبه هذا شبل المجتبى هذا شبل جاوب حسين بثبات وبسمع العالم صغر جاوب حسين بثبات وبسمع العالم صغر تدري عرس ويا الهنادي زفت بسوح الوغى زفت بسوح الوغى شمر ذراع المنايا بيده رفرف برمى والعزم جاسم هتف درعه وحسن نادى يا قومان أمية أنا جاسم ضنوته حين سمعوه الأعادي منا ما وعدنا فيها واضح مطلبه فيها واضح مطلبه هذا شبل المجتبى هذا شبل المجتبى شربوعت به الحمية وبعرض هاشم نبض شربوعت به الحمية وبعرض هاشم نبض ظلموا وبعج الفوارس سيفه بالحومة نمض سيفه بالحومة نمض ما جرى واحد عليه ولا لعد 4 رض ما جرى واحد عليه ولا لعد 4 رض إلا حين انقطع شسعة وجاه بالنسل الخنا إلا حين انقطع شسعة وجاه بالنسل الخنا على راسه صوبه وعلى راسه صوبه هذا شبل المجتبى هذا شبل المجتبى طاحت الضربة على راسه وطاح جاسمها صريح طاح جاسمها صريح نادى أدركني يا عم الصرخة وصلت للبقيع صرخة وصلت للبقيع واعتنى ويا الحسين الحسن للجاسم سريع واعتنى ويا الحسين الحسن للجاسم سريع واعتنت وياهم الزهرة الحزنها معلنة والمدامع ساجبة والمدامع ساجبة هذا شبل المجتبى هذا شبل المجتبى هذا شبل المجتبى هذا شبل المجتبى هذا شبل جاسم طلع من خيمته وويلاه يا سيدي جاسم طلع من خيمته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي جاسم طلع من خيمته وويلاه يا سيدي وجاسم طلع من خيمته وويلاه يا سيدي شبه البدر واجمل بعد جاسم طلع من خيمته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي شبه البدر واجمل بعد جاسم طلع من خيمته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي يتبختر بثوب العرس والجودة أمه وعمته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي كلهم بني هاشم اجوا حطوا العمامة زفته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي يما علي الأكبر اجا يما علي الأكبر اجا يشعلها بيده شمعته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي شاف أبو اليمة وبجا شاف أبو اليمة وبجا شارك أخوه بفرحته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي 70,000 سيف ورمح 70,000 سيف ورمح وكربلاء منتظرته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي خيل وسلم بس ما وصل خيل وسلم بس ما وصل للحومة كلها تلقته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي رملة بقت تتأمل رملة بقت تتأمل بلقت يرد من سفرته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي شافت الأبو الأكبر والقلب وتألمت من شافته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي ساعة ورجع عليها الولد ساعة ورجع عليها الولد متعني من دم ركبته وويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه يا سيدي ركضت تصيح بلا وعي ركضت تصيح بلا وعي جاسم يا يمه وشقته وويلاه يا سيدي يا ويلاه يا سيدي وويلاه 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 يا سيدي السلام عليك يا مولاي الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا علي بن ابي طالب سيد المرسلين ورحمه الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا فاطمه الزهراء سيده نساء العالمين ورحمه الله وبركاته. السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب اهل الجنه. السلام عليك يا ابا عبد الله وعلى الارواح التي حلت بفدائك عليك مني. سلام الله ابدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله اخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام على التسعة المعصومين من ولد الحسين علي بن الحسين زين العابدين ومحمد بن علي باقر علم النبيين وجعفر بن محمد الصادق وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم وعلي بن موسى الرضا ومحمد بن علي الجواد وعلي بن محمد الهادي والحسن بن علي العسكري والخلف الحجة القائم المهدي حجج على عبادك وملائكة في بلادك. اللهم صل عليهم صلاة كثيرة دائما. اللهم كن وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك
Thank you.